Hello, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. It's a pleasure to meet you again. I am Victoria Pletz, I'm the MBA Program Manager, and today we are having our fourth webinar dedicated to meet our MBA Director. So with us, we have Barbara Bidotto, and we also have Tim Baxter. Tim, I will leave directly the floor to you. We have a presentation to share, and then, of course, there is space for some questions. Please, Tim, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Vicky. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to meet you. Now, I know that I'm speaking to a mixed audience, so there are various different people in various stages of selection and so on. And so what I'll try and do is give you a brief overview of, as far as I am concerned, why attending an MBA is important. As Vicky said, I'm the MBA director, but I also work in the training room. I'm a member of the Leadership Dynamics team, which is basically all interaction between human beings as individuals and also groups as well. But I also have the pleasure of having done the MBA many, many years ago. We're talking about MBA 35 coming up soon. Well, I did MBA 6, you do the math. So I'm actually seeing this from lots of different perspectives. And for this reason, I've attempted to come up with something which I think should be able to give you an understanding, both from the point of view of MBA from the school, but also MBA from the person sitting in the training room, which hopefully will be you very soon. So let's begin. So why attend an MBA? Well, there are so many different reasons, but if you try and put them all into just one word, I think that word is change. Everybody who we find who embarks on an MBA wants to change something, change their life, change their job, change whatever, but change is always a very important element. And that is something that links everybody. And I find it very interesting right at the beginning of any program to find out what is the change that people are wanting to make sure that they can make concrete. So if change is the important thing that links everybody, what is an MBA? Well, first, let me tell you what an MBA is not, or let's say we shouldn't stop at that. Well, an MBA is not simply a piece of paper. I know that you get a piece of paper at the end, the diploma with a nice ribbon, but to be honest, the piece of paper is symbolic of something much, much bigger than simply a piece of A4. No, it's card, it's card. So what is an MBA? An MBA is the ability to broaden what you've got between your ears right now. So we don't start with a blank piece of paper. We start with what you've done up until this moment of time, and we're adding to it. And I think that's really important. An MBA is you investing in yourself and developing yourself. So that's an important starting point there. Yeah, so the paper, yes, very symbolic, but it's actually you. At the end of the day, it's you opening the door to wherever you need to go in terms of your change. For that, I'd like to move very quickly to this, what I believe are the biggest challenges in fulfilling potential. We're talking about your desire to go wherever you wish to in terms of change. And I've got three for you, really. And the first one is this. A lot of people, before they start their MBA, are quite unsure about the level of potential they've got. They've got some limitations. They've got some limiting beliefs. In other words, irrational decision-making. Now, the good news is everyone has got irrational decision-making. We're not computers. We're not machines. However, sometimes our irrational decision-making blocks us, stops us from fulfilling what we really want to. So that's one thing that can be quite difficult, not only in deciding, should I do an MBA or not, but actually when you're on the MBA. If you haven't had a chance yet, I think you really should speak to anyone who's either done the MBA or is doing the MBA at the moment, just to understand that an MBA is not perfect in terms of the sun is not always shining and the birds are not always singing. There are ups and downs. And when there are downs, that's when the irrational decision making may impact on us. So in other words, it's a roller coaster of a journey. So that's the first thing that may impact on our ability to get the best from an MBA. Let's move to the second of these. And the second, I would say, is this. Unfortunately, society seems to have created this idea that only perfect people can be successful. Well, I've never met a perfect person, and if I did, I'd find them very boring. Why? Well, because actually mistakes are the key to learning. If you've never made a mistake, you'd never be able to write or read or walk or anything. It's just that for some reason, especially when we start going to school, we're told that mistakes are wrong. So fear of mistakes very often means that we don't challenge ourselves. We don't experiment. We don't see what we could do. We just stick with what we've been told we're good at. Again, in order to get the best out of your MBA, I would recommend that you see mistakes or errors as part of the learning process. So anything that I make a mistake from, if I do it well, and we call this failing well, is an opportunity to learn something. So I like to see the MBA as a way of experimenting, trying something out, a laboratory, let's say. So we've got irrational decision making when the pressure is high. We've got the fear of making mistakes because society tends to say that if everything is right, then everything is correct. Whilst mistakes actually I would see as a way of seeing the starting point of learning something new. The third one is conformity. Now, we are social animals. So in other words, social animals like to stay with social animals. It's usual for us to want to be with people in our reference group. However, of course, if that reference group says we have to go this way and I feel I'd want to go the other way, it's quite difficult to take road B. It's not an easy thing. So to what extent am I willing to take road B, even if it's not the same as everyone else is doing? I think the good news is just looking at the makeup of the MBA, and I know that you've spoken in the other various webinars that you've had about the makeup of our MBA. We have such a level of diversity that conformity is quite difficult because the diversity level is very high. So I think this is an interesting thing in that we don't have so many people from the same background. So before you understand conformity, you have to understand what links us, and that's an interesting thing. So what have we got so far? Irrational decision-making, fear of mistakes, and conformity. Put that all together. Well, if we've got all of those three, that's going to actually block me getting the best from my MBA, which is a shame. And here I'm going to open up again maybe a provocatory way of seeing things, which is this. I believe that the scholastic system that we've all gone through, which includes university as well, because of a lack of maybe resources or maybe time and so on, tends to attempt to do this to us. So we all start as someone new, something different. And let's say the system tends to try and normalize us. And when it normalizes us, it's a bit of a problem. The way that I like to see our MBA here at MIB is a little bit different. So this is a quotation that I like very much from Neil Postman. We enter our educational systems as question marks, a desire to learn, and leave them as full stops. In other words, that is the rule. That is the way. What I would like to suggest is if you really want to get the best from an MBA experience, you regain that desire to be curious again. Yeah. So the desire to want to know, because at the end of the day, wanting to know, I believe, is all part of life. When we stop wanting to know extra, that's when we start saying bye-bye in terms of growth and so on. So, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, it's natural that there are various blocks that make getting the best from MBA quite a difficult thing to do. However, it's not impossible. Let me show you using the different styles of learning from someone called Gregory Bateson. And we're going to have a look at four, well, actually it's 3 plus 0 level, but 4 different levels of learning here. And I'd like to suggest that when we're looking at MBAs, we do our best in order to use every single one of them. So let's begin with the first one. And the first one, I'm going to call the University of Life. Bateson calls this level 0. So the University of Life is this. Try it out, do it. And absolutely doing it is a very good way of learning. However, it can take a very long time and it can be, well, rather dangerous, to be honest. So, for example, if I'm curious and I see a fire and I say, well, what happens if I put my hand in the fire? I will find out, but I'm probably going to pay quite a heavy price there. So the University of Life is great. It definitely gives us learning. However, it can be rather costly, rather risky, and take quite a long time. So that's one way of doing things, and that's fine. The second way, or level 1 for Bateson, is this one here. Instead of trying everything directly, what if I simply understand what the rules behind it are, and then I can apply those rules? In this case here, maybe the rule would be if you put your hand in a fire, it will get burnt. So I've got the knowledge without having the risk of having a burnt hand for the next couple of weeks. And that's great. And most systems, educational systems, stop there in terms of rules. So most educational systems and most things that we can see, for example, online, tend to stop at level 1, or this idea of facts. And that's great. So facts and processes and tools and contents. And of course, that's a very important part of any educational input. But it's not enough. And at a certain point, very often also at university, people start feeling that they are simply sponges. So I'm required to learn facts, and that at a certain point, I'm asked to just speak them out. In other words, to anyone who's got a good memory, great, will be able to pass. And again, that's fine, that's okay. But if we're talking about an MBA, and especially an MBA which requires at least 3 years of work experience, we can't just stop at that. That's not enough. If we did that, and if that's all we offered in terms of the MBA in international business at MIB, we'd be out of the market. We are very much aware that you can get all of these things, facts and processes and content, online, free, without ever getting out of bed. So we're aware that it's important, but it's a starting point rather than an ending point. So contents and processes, of course. The curriculum, I'm sure you've looked through. I'm sure you've asked questions in terms of things like electives and concentrations and blah, 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 from Victoria and Barbara and so on. And of course, if you have any questions about that, we're very happy to answer. But that's only one part of the game. What we find very interesting in this stage of getting ready for the next MBA is in the selecting of various individuals. So each individual has been selected to bring a cohort, in this case here, MBA 35. But we only really find out what that cohort is like when we put them together on day 1. And that's an interesting thing. And this brings me to the second level of learning. So the second level of learning is this. If we have a fact, and it's a fact without a context, it doesn't really help us. It's just something you can learn in an abstract way. It doesn't really help you implement things. However, if you take a fact, let's take this here, you put your hand in the fire and it will get burnt, and we give it a context, then it changes. So here's our context, level 2. I wouldn't put my hand in a fire usually, but I may do to save someone's life. Now, this is probably a fireman or firefighter who is saying this. And okay, right, yeah, that makes sense. So how does this relate to our MBA? Well, of course, facts and content is important, but it's the fact that the facts and content are shared amongst your cohort, MBA 35, in the mystical Ferdinandeo Palace, which is behind Barbara Vidotto and me as you speak, that makes the difference. In fact, the context is very important. At the end of every MBA, when we feed back on people's experience, the biggest takeaway that we get usually is not a specific fact or a specific content or a specific course, but the interaction between the people, the interaction between the cohort, the networking, the relationships, the difficulties of dealing with difference is where it's all at. So this part of context, so you're doing it with people in a particular situation, whether that is physically present here in Trieste or at a distance over Zoom, as we're doing right now, is really important. And that interaction adds an important layer, a critical layer to the content. Okay, so that's the second level. So far, we've had direct experience, level 0, the rule, level 1, process, content, and so on, tools, and level 2, putting that rule in a context, in a specific situation. And in our case here, the interaction between the cohort itself and, in this case here, the wider idea of the course and the school. Finally, level 3. Level 3 is the most difficult to get, but I think the most important to get if, again, we're thinking about you getting the best from your MBA. The level 3 idea is this. So let's go back to our analogy. And if you remember, the analogy is about putting your hand in a fire. And in this case here, the firefighter saying, I wouldn't do it usually, but I would do to save someone's life. Well, level 3 is this one here. What does this say about me? So what does this rule in this context say about me and who I am? In this case, our analogy, what does risking my life for another person say about me, my values, what's important for me, what drives me, my principles? This, I believe, is really key to getting the best from your experience. Again, if all you're going to be is a sponge in terms of collecting information, that's not really going to help you in terms of implementing and get the best from your results, not only during the course, but also when you go back into the real world and back into jobs and so on. This idea of using the information with a wider context, your cohort, and then the most important thing is everything you do, having time to reflect and say, okay, what have I taken away? In what way have I enriched myself in terms of at the end of this day or this idea? What have I added to who I am? Now that's quite deep, but it's really important because I'm sure, again, you've discussed this with my colleagues. Not every day is it possible to come with your batteries fully charged. We know we're human beings. Sometimes it's a nice day. Sometimes we are energized. Sometimes it's an awful day. But the whole idea is, over time, are you able to come and bring your game, your A game to the course day in, day out? And that's quite difficult, especially for those of you who have decided to do it either in a distance or as part-time, because you've got many balls in the air, not just yourself here in the training room. So it's not an easy thing. However, it's a really important thing. The most important thing for me in terms of getting the most from your MBA is your ability to reflect on what have I taken away from this experience in order to enlarge who I am. Okay, let's put this all together. So the whole idea for me of an MBA, in terms of my way of seeing things, both as the MBA director, but also someone who has the diploma from many years ago, is this. In order to try and overcome these blocks that we tend to have in terms of irrational decision-making or fear of mistakes or conformity, it's important to be able to look at the MBA in terms of multiple ways of doing things. That's directly dirtying my hands, that's level 0. That's learning tools and processes, definitely. That's applying them within the context. So in other words, the sharing that goes on through the cohort. And finally, the reflection in terms of how am I growing in terms of this? What does this mean for me? And I think those are all really important ways of ensuring that your investment in time and money and energy gives you the most enriching experience. Why all of this? Well, because I think it's not just about letting you develop. It's about also thinking about what you will do when you go back into the job market. And to do this, I'd just like to show you this meme. I do like taking memes off the internet. This is me watching a 1-hour training in 3 minutes. There's also something that says there better not be a survey at the end of this. Now, what's all of this about? Well, if this man is watching a safety video, then there is an Excel sheet that says he's seen the video. But does that mean he can apply the video? Does it mean that he is safety conscious in the workplace? And the answer is, well, no, it doesn't. So what I'd like to suggest is I believe that it is always and ever more important to see the distinction between two things. One is responsibility. And responsibility is basically usually when your boss or someone senior to you gives you a task. So watch the training video. And at that point, you've done it, yes or no. And the guy on the left of the screen, well, he's done it. So there you go. But is that useful? Well, it's useful to fill up an Excel cell, but actually, no, in terms of what he's learned, it's not at all. So the whole idea, I believe, in terms of the MBA, not only for you, but also for the people who you will be leading and managing when you go back into the workplace, is to move from responsibility to this word here, accountability. Because accountability is not, have I done it, yes or no, but how much have I put of me into it? What is the quality I've been able to get out of it? And the important thing here is I cannot impose accountability on you. You can feel the importance of feeling accountable, or you can feel not to. So it cannot be imposed from others. So there we go. That's the whole idea. To what extent can we make sure that we feel accountable for the experience that we have within the MBA as learners, but also thinking carefully about when you go back into the workplace, how can I make sure that the people who I am leading and managing feel accountable for what they do? And I do believe that if you're able to do that, you're going to make the workplace a better place and a much more productive and effective place. So let's put it all together. Basically, I've been speaking to you about the MBA and the importance of the MBA, but at the same time, I have been sneakily promoting my topic, which is leadership dynamics. And leadership dynamics, from my point of view, is this. Is within the MBA is being accountable for my learning. Of course, we as the school need to provide you with the process and the content and the structure and the context and the cohort, but it's really important that you also put in your part. To what extent are you able to enhance your chance of changing to be very effective? So that's my idea, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of what is an MBA and how can you get the best from your MBA. Okay, that's all I wanted to say, because I wanted to try and explain to you how important I believe this opportunity will be for you to grow. And now I'm going to cross my fingers. I'd like to ask you if you have any questions. If you do, I'm very happy to answer them, either on the content that we've just seen or just generally.
So I invite you to use the Q&A session or the chat as you prefer. We are available as well, myself and Victoria. If you do have any questions, please take this opportunity.
We have a first question from Gabriela, and she says, do you have any suggestions for us before starting? How can we prepare ourselves?
Yes, well, I think, thank you very much, Gabriela. It's a very good question. I'm thinking back to what I did. I've got to say that I came from a non-technical background. And so I was a bit worried about all of the maths related things, such as accountancy and finance and so on. So that might be useful to have a look at the basics there. And again, we can help you in terms of if you're feeling that you're not very strong on that, in order to have a look at some basics of that. I think the most important thing is to be psychologically ready in terms of the experience, because as I said before, Gabriela, it really is a roller coaster. It doesn't, to begin with, it's very exciting, and then it starts to get tough. You'll find that the workload changes as well, because we're trying to squeeze in, I'd say 1.5 years in a year. And at the end of the day, it's only about 9 months in the class. So there's a lot of things to do. And so I think maybe it's a good idea also to have recharge your batteries as well, Gabriela, because it will need you to be full of energy in order to do it. And to be curious. That's the most important thing, to be curious.
Thank you, Tim. I think that's related to the pressure and the demanding program. Question by Pietro, who is asking, are there resources available to help students manage stress?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Pietro. So there are a range of resources. The most obvious one that comes to mind for me is you will have a session on time and stress management by my colleague, which is very useful. All of us, however good we are with time management, only have 24 hours a day. It's the use of those hours that tends to increase or decrease pressure. So we can definitely help ourselves by being more aware of how we use our time. Without a doubt, one of the positive things about having a small cohort, Pietro, so we're not talking about 90 people, but classes are 25, 30 people, means that we get to know you very quickly. And so we are very happy to speak on a one-to-one. Or myself, Vicky. So the sooner that people have any issues, the easier it will be to help out. And I think that's a really positive thing about being in a smaller school, that we're able to tailor for your needs. And we do very much our utmost to make sure that your experience is as rich as possible. So without a doubt, there will be moments when it will be more difficult and moments when it will be easier. At the end of the experience, I think people learn most when they're under pressure. But the tendency when you're under pressure is to protect yourself rather than open up. So it's quite difficult. It's a little game. So we will do our best in terms of not only what we give you, but in terms of also the process as well, to make sure that we help you deal with inevitably these difficult moments.
Another question from Sophie asking, how accessible are faculty members to students outside of class hours?
Well, very. 3 in the morning, no, but very. Again, I go back to what I was saying before. I think it's really positive, the fact that the ratio in terms of number of participants to teaching staff is very favorable indeed. So of all of the people who I know who are currently teaching and lecturing with us in the MBA, I think everyone is very happy to speak to people, either having a coffee. We are in Italy, of course. We have a very nice bar, but also a lunch break, also afterwards, also through emails. I think there's a very high level of accessibility. We really do our best in terms of making sure that people not only understand the basics, but also if they want to go further, suggesting what they can do. So I think there's a big scope in terms of helping people take the next step in terms of interaction with not just the teaching staff, but everyone. The school, I refer to the school as Mama Mib, because that's what it's like for me. So when I come here, I really do feel like it's a sort of enlarged family with all the positives and challenges as well. But that's how we'd like you to feel it as well.
Thank you, Tim. Let's see if there are some other questions. Okay, so there is one more from Alessandro. What qualities do you look for in a prospective student? Wow.
That's a question. That's a question for Barbara and the selection team to begin with there. Because to be honest, Alessandro, I see your CVs after you've been selected, and so it's very interesting because one thing is the CV and the motivational essays and so on. The other thing is seeing someone actually interacting in a new situation. So I'm going to be really sneaky and ask Barbara. So Barbara, what are you looking for specifically in terms of an MBA candidate? And then I'll add my part.
So I think that the first answer could be related to how we call the selection time. So we call it a motivational interview because it's the aim of that meeting is to better know each other for sure, but as well understanding the motivations that our candidates have throughout the MBA and towards our MBA, because we know, as Tim was saying, that it's a demanding program. So you need to be motivated. You need to have clear ideas of what are your professional goals and why are you taking an MBA at this stage of your career. So this is the first step that we look for. Curiosity, we go back to curiosity as suggestion of Tim. We're looking for people who are willing to take out the most from the MBA, but as well to put a lot into it. This is why we always ask as well for which is the contribution that you could give to the MBA. Then I don't know if Vicky wants to add something before spoiling your answer, Tim.
I think that something that we look is people who are willing to play the game. Of course, you have to bring also something to the class. We will give you the knowledge. We will be here with our lecturers. We will guide you through all the process until your diploma. But you have to bring something as well. And you have to share it with your colleagues, with the lecturers, in order to make the discussions more interesting. And for sure, this will be more interesting for you, because in the end, as we always say, the more you put in, the more you will take out. That is what we would say. Let's say, Tim, how would you conclude this?
The first thing I'd do is I'd go on a how not to, and then I'll go to how to. So a couple of months ago, I was doing some training with a big multinational company, and one of the people came up to me and said, "You know, I feel I need to do an MBA," and I said, "Oh, okay." And I said, "So why?" And he said, "No, I just think I need that piece of paper." And I said, "Well, you're not going to do it at my school." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because that's not motivational. I need a piece of paper. Fine, you can get one. There are lots of ways to get the piece of paper. But as I said at the beginning of our chat today, that's really not what an MBA is. I think it's about growth and wanting to develop. Now, it doesn't mean you have to know what the end goal is, because many people come and they don't know. They want to change something. You don't need to know where you want to be at the end, but the desire to want to grow, develop, be curious, I think that's really important. And what Vicky said is important. Everyone who is chosen is bringing something to the course, something to the program. That's really important. You may look around on day one and say, "Oh, wow, that person has got this many years. That person's worked for this. Oh, well, oh dear. Oh my gosh." Well, actually, that's true, but you're in there because you're bringing something as well. Everyone who comes to the course has been selected because we believe that they've got something to add to the course. So we're looking for a level of diversity which enriches. I go back to the context. That's why every single cohort is different. And the feel, the environment is very different from cohort to cohort. What you've got in common is a high level of diversity. You don't have 25 engineers. You don't have 30 people from the same region in Italy. That wouldn't make sense for what we've just spoken about. So every person who's been selected has something to bring, and we like to try and help them feel that they can offer that. As Vicky said, the more you put in, the more you get out. That was a long answer, Alessandro. I hope you got something from it.
Thank you. Let's see if there are some other questions. We are on time. We have started on time, and we will leave you free earlier than informed. So yes, I think there are no questions. Of course, if you do have any from now on, you know how to reach us out. We will be glad to share. If you have specific questions for Tim, we will be glad to share them with him. So, Vicky, if you want to conclude the session, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for participating. I hope it has been useful and interesting. Of course, as Barbara said, you can contact us anytime if you have more questions. It was a pleasure to see you again, and we're looking forward to meet you here in September to start working together. Thank you, Tim, for your time and for your precious advice for our candidates. And thank you, Barbara, also for organizing the webinar. We may be organizing a next webinar soon, maybe more related to the activities, procedures with the university just before starting. We will let you know. We will let you know. Thank you and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.